Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's start this video from the situation review in the Kursk Oblast of the Russian Federation because recently Ukraine was successful out there. The Ukrainian army took around 3 up to 5 square kilometers of the territory, and the idea for Ukraine, from what I may say, that they want to take the small road under control on the way to reach the bigger highway. By the way guys, the origin of this military map analytics, Neutrality reports, I'll put the links for them in the video description just below, so you may check the source yourself, and I share lots of the information from Neutrality reports. They do fantastic job. Speaking about the rest of the front lines, well, mostly they were stabilized, let's say, by the Russian army. At least they say that those were stabilized, and definitely I may confirm that the move of Ukrainian army was stopped, but not just because of the Russian resistance or something. As I told you in many of my videos, Ukraine needs supplies to perform this operation, reliable supplies. And if you move ahead, you need to extend the supply lines, which makes them vulnerable. So for the coming weeks, I guess we're gonna see the stationary operation of Ukrainian army. Ukraine will continue to propel forward, but not as fast as at the very beginning of the Kursk operation. I believe that Ukraine will finally get Convoy under control. The fight is really heavy out there. Russia tries to send some of the reinforcements, and so far they're keeping the most part of the settlement under their control, but Ukraine also pushes very hard. The other hotspot is in Glushkovo district. Recently Russia put the new pontoon bridge. I think it happened this afternoon, and Ukraine not yet HIMARSed that bridge according to my information. Well, probably tomorrow we're gonna see the images of this bridge being caputed. The problem with this river that cuts the entire region, the river named Seine, that it is quite narrow, so Russia may build up pontoon bridges very fast. It is not the Dnieper river as in Kherson Oblast, for example, then Russians also were cut. But Ukraine has its surveillance in the region, FPV drones and HIMARS artillery, so Russia keeps pontoon bridges not for a long time. I guess this is the latest image of the pontoon bridge. Definitely Russia built a new one. It is not far away from Glushkovo, and I hope that tomorrow Ukraine will just kaboom the bridge with all of the engineering equipment and probably Russian forces. Guys, just a super short break. If you want to support the job that I do daily on YouTube, you might do it via Patreon. The link for my page is available in the video description just below. Thank you for your motivation. Let's go next. The eastern area, well, there Ukraine broke through the Russian defense, but just with limited forces. In this place, Russians are still capable to hold Ukrainian army attacks. The interesting case happened with the Russian soldiers who were forced to retreat from the women's colony, so the women's prison. The settlement name is Malaya Lochnya, and definitely Russian forces were encircled, but somehow they managed to break through Ukrainian encirclement during the night time, and they escaped the women's prison. What is interesting that the most of the soldiers are ex-Russian prisoners, so the prison was a very convenient place for them to hold the defense. And this is the Russian propaganda video about the case. They got the interview with one of the Russian soldiers who escaped the encirclement, and they make heroes from those ex-prisoners. So what this guy said is actually very funny. There were Poles, French and African Americans attacking our positions. African Americans. The call sign of the soldier is Zoma, and definitely they were honored for recruitment. It happens not very often in the Russian army. Well, Malaya Lochnya settlement is kind of the strategic one because it plays a great role of the communication hub. It has many of the road intersections and it leads towards Lvov. It's located on a road which connects Sudzha and Lvov. By the way, Russians start looting in Lvov city. Let me show you this video. So the local shops, markets, they were looted probably by the Russian army or maybe by the locals themselves. And Lvov is quite far away from the front lines. Oh, sorry guys, my mistake, it's the Rylsk town. Rylsk town is also far away. Let me show you the town on the military map. Lvov located far away also from the front lines. You may see AK-38, a very important and strategic highway, and Rylsk, well, it's here, really far away from the front lines. To get to it, Ukraine first of all needs to take Convoy under control, and later on get to the point. It's more than 35 kilometers, I guess, from Rilsk to Korno, and Russians themselves start to loot their shops on their own controlled territory. I guess it happens because many of the locals left the area to the other places somewhere in Russia. What is concerning, and you may see it on this military map, that Russia started to build defense lines. Some of them were built near Rilsk, but the most capable defense was built not far away from the Kurchatov nuclear power plant. Russia is really concerned about it potentially being captured by Ukrainian army. So even now Ukraine needs to have lots of the forces to penetrate those defense lines. It's not an easy job any longer. Russia will not be caught by surprise or off guard. It's better to say no. They sent more reinforcements to the region and also from the Ukrainian front lines, but not from the east. They're taking their forces from the south of Ukraine, from Kherson Oblast. So for now, this goal for Ukraine is just unreal, but probably we should wait for the second stage of the Kursk Operation. At least I heard the rumors also from some of the sources in Ukraine. Sorry, I cannot tell them right now, that closer to November, Ukraine might start some new offensive, and probably it might happen in Kursk. By the way, Russians also tell about that possible scenario that Ukraine may attack, for example, Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, start the landing operation in Crimea to reinforce the group in Kursk, to attack Bryansk, Belgorod, whatsoever, but they say that Ukraine is getting ready for something. The Russian side explains it that Ukraine needs to have some sort of the PR victory, a blitzkrieg that will show that Ukrainian army is still capable, but it is already happening, in the Kursk Oblast. There Ukraine is capable indeed, yes, with the losses also, because there is no war without losses, but Ukraine gained new territories, this time on the Russian side, but Russia hesitates to send their forces on the east to fight. Over here for them, the bigger goal is to occupy more territories in Ukraine. Also, we have not so good news that Russia continued to use their Iskander missiles to hit Ukrainian reinforcements in the Sumy region. Sumy region is over here, this is the Sumy city, and today Ukraine prepared kind of the long convoy which was identified by the Russian surveillance drone and was demolished by their Iskander missiles and some of the rocket artillery systems which Russia launched from their own territory. So I guess you'll be able to see there are lots of the Ukrainian trucks, definitely with reinforcements. Somehow they're staying stationary on the road. It's a big mistake conducted by Ukrainian command. And this is the Iskander missile which hit this area. You can see Russians also use cluster munition to hit as many targets as possible with clusters. The same stuff as Ukraine uses in ATACMS missiles or GMLRS standard HIMARS missiles. So we may say that it's some sort of the response of the Russian side on attack of their convoy in Rilsk. Then they also parked their convoy that was stationary for a very long period of time. Ukraine was able to spot it and hit with HIMARS systems. The Russia lost at least 400 of the soldiers. The losses of the Ukrainian side here are unknown for now. Guys, I want to tell you the situation as it is. If there is something big happens, I'm always telling you about it. If it's good news or big news, doesn't matter. So here, definitely it was a mistake from the Ukrainian side to keep the convoy stationary at a single point for such a long period of time. How long they stay there, well, I'm out of clue, but the convoys should move every time. You see that we have the thermal camera image, so it happened during the night time, but even during the night time, Russia is able to see everything because they have thermal vision or night vision cameras. Ukraine also has that stuff and uses it successfully, but here definitely a mistake that shouldn't be done by Ukrainian command. And definitely Ukraine there had losses. The stuff from the combat images or from the drone cameras I may only publish on my Telegram page. My Telegram page is available in the video description just below, and there I share absolutely everything. I really like this platform because of the low censorship. I don't post gore stuff, but it helps you to analyze more details about, for example, what tools Russia had used, because they used together with Iskander also artillery systems. It means that Ukrainian convoy wasn't that far away from the Russian position, so not far away from the Russian border. And it is bad because in that area for sure convoys should constantly move, not to get get in this trap. So without those videos, I wouldn't understand the actual situation. But Russia also suffers a lot. They have absolutely tremendous losses in their armored vehicles, in their artillery, because Ukraine constantly uses FPV drones. And it seems like the FPV drones which Ukrainian army operates with has the range of at least 20 up to 25 kilometers, judging on those images again that I analyzed. Well, sorry guys for the blurred image, it is actually a video that I will also share. So there was the big Russian position with lots of the artillery systems and armored vehicles. All of that was kaboom with the help of FPV. It happened not in the Kursk Oblast, but in Donetsk Oblast, not far away from Pokrovsk. Well, actually there everything is not far away from Pokrovsk nowadays. Also not far away from the place where Russia was forced to leave the positions because they were encircled. Russia is under the risk of being encircled again because Ukraine gained more territories and being spotted in this village Kamyshevka. So potentially now it could be like that, and there are some of the settlements that could be a big trap for the Russian army. So indeed it's a very tricky situation for the Russian forces. Here Noel report says that the Russian forces are in danger. Indeed they are. And again, it's very important to control this road which leads towards Lvov. Lvov is a very important point as well, but still it's far away from the front lines. Without a massive reinforcement, Ukraine wouldn't be able to reach Lvov anytime soon. But this picture, well, I like it a lot. Well, we're gonna discuss with you the situation on Ukrainian front lines and also in Pokrovsk later at the end of this video. For now, let's speak about the other news and about the attitude of the candidate for the presidency in the United States of America, Donald Trump, towards the Ukrainian operation in Kursk. He said that Ukraine plunged into the Russian territory, and there is the huge risk of the Third World War. So definitely Trump is not happy about the Ukrainian offensive, as I do. I'm always happy when Ukraine wins, but he is very concerned about it. He's so concerned that it's kind of strange to hear it, after all. Well, I'm gonna leave the United States politics aside today. Yeah, we're gonna return back to the topic, but mostly to the White House administration later in this video. But for Trump, no more today. But what we know that the Ukrainian military official Lavrov visits the United States with some sort of the delegation, and they present the list of the possible targets which Ukraine might hit with ATACMS missiles, and they insist on the permission for Ukraine to use ATACMS against the Russian military airfields and other military targets. But for me, well, I think it's too late already. Why? Because Russia moved around 90% of their airplanes from the airfields which are bordering Ukraine. For example, the Baltimore airfield in Voronezh, well, mostly it's been abandoned by the Russian Air Force. There are just a few jets left. So what's the strategy of the Russian Air Force, or it's better to say airspace forces as now been called? Well, they use their airplanes from the further distance and they take less bombs. For Sukhoi 34, well, it's not that difficult, but for the other Russian airplanes like Sukhoi 35, it could be a big disadvantage because it might take less fuel for the flight. But this longer range is still enough for Russia to drop huge FAB 3000 bombs right on the Ukrainian positions, for example in Donetsk Oblast. Russia now advances towards Kurakhove. Later on I'm going to show you everything on the military map, and they back up their advancements with lots of the FAB, aviation bombs. But they also have FAB 5000, which is even bigger, but they don't have the gliding unit for that one. But from what I know, they're working on that, so probably in the future they're going to also start dropping those huge aviation FAB 5000 bombs. So Russia foreseeing the possible situation with ATACMS permission, and that permission will not change that much today compared to what it could have been done with the Russian aviation. Many of the Russian airplanes could have been just demolished, but now, yes, they'll play a great role, but far away compared to what Ukraine really needs. Nevertheless, this solution and decision by the White House administration is very important for Ukraine. I hope that Ukraine will get it, at least limited to some of the particular targets. And who is blocking that permission? Well, obviously Jake Sullivan. He's the national security advisor of President Joe Biden, and we already know that he leaves his position very soon. It doesn't matter who wins the elections in the United States, but there will be a new administration of the White House. So probably just after it, Ukraine will obtain its permission to use ATACMS, but I hope it will happen maybe even this month, who knows. You know, those political games and that stuff. Ukraine really needs that permission. It needed it a long time ago, but even now, you know, there is some hesitation. Alright, it is happening right now. Ukraine targets Russian facilities with the help of the drones. So Ukraine doesn't have the permission, but it uses its own constructed drones very effectively. You know what happens with the Russian oil refineries, with the Russian airfields and their ammunition storages? Yes, regular kabooms. And from the evening or night report coming from the Russian side, we understand that Ukraine already launched the record drone attack on the Russian facilities in bordering territories of Belgorod Oblast, Kursk Oblast. More than 100 drones were reported in the Russian skies. They activate their air defense as usual and report that they'll shut down everything. But we know the outcome. The part of the drones, as always, reaches the destination with a quite comfortable flight, and this is probably the Russian S-300 or S-400 air defense system in operation against Ukrainian drones. So those are the messages from the Russian Z military bloggers. Ukrainian armed forces launched a record number of UAVs, more than 100 pieces, several regions of the central and south of Russia. Areas affected Lipetsk, Oryol, Bryansk, Tula, Belgorod and Voronezh regions. And it's Ukrainian response actually in the Russian strikes, because the last night Russia launched, as you can see, many of the drones towards Ukrainian infrastructure, hitting some of it. And it seems like Russia uses some sort of the new versions of the drones equipped with a jet engine. This is the flying wing construction, very effective by the way, but still the jet fuel consumption is much higher compared to benzene. That's why the piston engine for the long-range drones is more profitable. But if Russia strikes some sort of the neighboring territory in Sumy region, Chernigiv for example, well, those drones could be more effective. Also, Russia hit the Kharkiv region yesterday with a precise aviation gliding bomb strike, and right after it Ukraine launched its own attack to hit Belgorod Oblast, Belgorod region and the Belgorod city itself. There were civilian casualties from both of the sides, but the difference between the Russian attack and the Ukrainian one, well, Ukraine launched the artillery strike with no any precision, but Russia precisely hit this multi-story civilian building, because they dropped the gliding bombs, which are called CABs, Керована авіаційна bomba, or precisely guided aviation bomb. I had to blur this image, but here's the multi-story building, and definitely it was hit precisely with the Russian CAB. And again guys, I continue to tell you about my Telegram channel. It is available in the video description just below, and there I share the information about everything what is happening around Ukraine, and not only. For example, I'll write right now. Here we go. Ukraine launched one of the biggest drone strikes on Russia. More than 100 drones are already in the Russian airspace. Yes, I have to do it because my English is not very good. Okay, done it. We have reactions, we have emojis, we have comments. I look for them sometimes, and we're going to discuss many of the news which my Telegram audience is already aware of. Well, obviously on the YouTube video we'll see my reaction towards the news, maybe more information relative to it, because later on you may have more information. But first information is available right on my Telegram channel, so I highly recommend you to subscribe for my Telegram group. And here I just press it and I read the comments from the audience, which is absolutely great. And also, let's speak about Lavrov, by the way. He stated that Russia doesn't want to trade the Russian territory, original Russian territory, for the Ukrainian one. It seems like they oriented to push out Ukrainian forces from the Kursk by force, but that would cost a lot for the Russian army. They're in lack of the army man. So if they want to make this operation in Kursk and continue their assaults on the eastern side of Ukraine, they absolutely have to announce a new massive mobilization in Russia. Well, maybe after all not announce, but to start it once again, getting more of the ordinary men into the Russian army. And it tells again that Russia doesn't want to negotiate really with Ukraine. They're oriented to press, continue pressing Ukraine for some sort of the solution, and they're waiting for the election results in the United States, because without the United States, I don't think how long Ukrainian army could potentially resist against the Russian heavy strikes, and now they strike really heavy. But also we understand that Russia now goes all in with all of their forces available to get as much ground as possible before the elections in USA. As for the Lavrov, well, some of the experts on Twitter already buried him down to the grave. Together with Putin and Peskov, there were some of the rumors that Lavrov lost his life probably in aviation accident today. There was definitely the air crash in Kamchatka of the Russian Mi-8 helicopter. Those helicopters are used even sometimes by the Russian officials to get to the remote regions of Russia, to be more mobile, let's say, or if there is no place for the landing of the jet. Those helicopters fly regularly in Kamchatka, and you may reach some of the remote areas of Kamchatka just by helicopter, or walking several days, so I guess that Russian officials would use this transport. From what we know, there were 19 passengers and 2 more pilots, so totally 21 souls on board of this helicopter. If those officials have souls even, but it's the aviation expression, SOB. SOB is not what you think, it's souls on board, or POB, persons on board. For now we have the confirmation just about 2 of the passengers. The identity is being confirmed. It's the director of the Russian Football Union. His name is or was Alexei Zamatin. He was accompanied by his wife Polina. This information is given to us by the Russian sources. They don't share any kind of the information about the rest of 17 of the persons on board of this helicopter. The similar helicopter Putin used during his recent trip to Chechnya, Grozny. So I'm still waiting for more information about the case. It's quite interesting because it's very similar to kind of the interesting event happened with helicopter of Iranian president. Yeah, you probably remember it too, Raisi, right? Then the helicopter crashed into terrain during the very foggy weather. And here is exactly the same situation. The helicopter probably crashed into terrain because the rescue teams are unable to reach the helicopter or to find it because of the thick fog. So is there a chance that Putin was on board? I don't think so. It's too good to be true. By the way, there was one more air crash in Russia, this time with Antonov 2 aircraft that was carrying some of the skydivers. Somehow it crashed into the forest. No casualties, but many were delivered to the local hospital. Well, probably it is happening because today is the day of Ukrainian aviation, not the Russian one. It's not just the military aviation day, but in general the aviation day of Ukraine. So it's my celebration, by the way, because I think that I also the part of the Ukrainian aviation since I have still a Ukrainian pilot license with a valid rating. Alright, for the other events, Belarus moves more of the forces closer to Ukrainian border. We can see those kind of the images presented to us from the Belarus side. It means that they are not doing it secretly. They want to show that we are ready to repel any sort of the attacks from the Ukrainian side. But definitely they just want to rise the tensions at the border. That's it. That's their goal. And what they did, they put B letters on those armored vehicles and tanks, kind of the small ones, to be really a tactical sign. It should be like that for all of the turrets, also over here on the top. But judging on those images, what is here, what is there, it's not the tactical sign. It means that it's just a circus. They also didn't put any sort of the protection. Those are just the standard vehicles. Absolutely incapable against the FPV drone strikes or even the drone drops. It is absolute nonsense to use those kind of the vehicles which are absolutely unprepared against the Ukrainian capable forces, because even small Ukrainian forces are more competent compared to any sort of the Belarus army. They just want to show that, okay, we're ready to attack. We even put the tactical signs on our vehicles, but come on guys. More about aviation, I shared this video. This is a Ukrainian MiG-29 and here it launches the missile which hits the drone not far away from the airplane. I already told you the story of how one of the Ukrainian pilots, Karaya, hit the drone very close to the airplane itself and basically he shot down his own airplane. Yes, he shot down the drone as well, but with the help of the shrapnel, and there are some small shrapnel balls, or there could be squares or nails. Well, they penetrated the airplane skin, causing significant damage, and the pilot had to eject. So this is also very close, as you may see. So the rocket flies and hit the drone not far away from the airplane, maybe a few hundred meters away. But you see, it seems like pilot wanted to make this turn right after he launched the missile, but he saw that missile hit the drone at acceptable distance. That's why he didn't start this maneuver, but what he did, he filmed kind of the interesting video with that cloud. About the F-16, which Ukraine lost recently, well, there is a new article published by the Washington Post. Now they say that probably the airplane was shot down by the Ukrainian air defense. It could be Patriot. One of the Ukrainian MPs, Bezugla, said that he has the direct information, that the airplane definitely was hit by the Patriot missile. And unfortunately, actually there is the great possibility of this scenario, as I told you in my video about F-16, which Ukraine lost recently, 2 days ago. But at this stage, I wouldn't trust Bezugla because she's basically crazy. Yes, she's definitely crazy, mad person. However, at the same time, I wouldn't accuse her of some sort of the disinformation or even spreading this message, because there is no official information now being spread by the Ukrainian Air Force or Ukrainian Military Command, Ukrainian Politician Command. So at least we have some sort of the information from Bezugla. For now, it's better not to trust it, but we should take it in account. And also the same information, as I told you, is coming from the Wall Street Journal and other media sources. So it could be definitely a friendly fire. About Kadyrov forces and Ahmat battalion, I have lots of the memes posted on my other media like Telegram, but here I must share with you some of them. So this is the big billboard somewhere in Russia. The best commander is the one who is winning without the fight. The quote from Sun Tzu. Here we have the face of Aludinov. He's the commander of the Ahmat battalion. Well, guys, honestly, I think it was Photoshop, but it looks very real and at the same time very funny, because Ahmat doesn't want to fight. Good news from Romania. The Romanian Defense Ministry submitted the bill to send the Patriot system to Ukraine. Thank you, Romania, for your awesome support. Interesting news from Poland. Prime Minister Tusk said that Ukraine will not join the European Union unless it solves a very big historical issue with Poland around the massacre in Volyn. Or Volyn massacre. If you don't know that story, well, I'm not gonna tell you just in this report, you may Google it. And probably it's the darkest part of Ukrainian history. Well, every nation has that stuff. But for Ukraine and Ukrainians, I think it was a very terrible move towards the Polish population. Yeah, there were some of the bad things done against Ukrainians by Poland also, but in 20th century, the Volyn massacre tragedy caused the most losses among civilians. So what Poles done later to Ukrainian population, basically it was deportation of Ukrainians to the western and the central side of Poland. Well, most of the Polish politicians condemned that event, but it's like uncomparable with what Ukrainians caused in Volyn. And I still wonder why Ukrainian politicians do not recognize fully the responsibility for it. If you Google it, Ukraine condemns that event, but not fully recognize their responsibility again. And you may say, Dennis, you're wrong, Polish also did something wrong, but believe me, there is no excuse for the tragedy of Volyn. Basically, it was the open genocide against the Polish people, against everyone, children, women, old people. It was just terrible. It's the history, yes, but Ukraine should fully recognize the responsibility for that. Without it, there will be no step ahead. I'm 100% sure about it. So why did the Prime Minister of Poland say about it from nowhere? No, there is a big scandal in Poland caused by the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Kuleba, who was visiting Poland. He met with his Polish colleague and he was asked the question about this historical event, and he started to say some of the strange stuff that Polish deported Ukrainians. Yes, it's bad, but you cannot compare it with what happened in Volyn at first, and later on he said that they were deported from the Ukrainian territories, but actually they were deported from the Polish territories, not Ukrainians. So actually he called the part of Poland a Ukrainian territory in front of the Polish foreign minister, who didn't react on that event, but later on was criticized together with Kuleba. So basically Kuleba fucked up with his job. I'm saying it openly. He's not competent from what I say. Actually, I personally don't like that guy because it is not his first mistake. And you know, Ukraine really needs allies. If we're gonna speak like that from above to our friends, Ukraine will just stay alone with this fight against Russia. I'm sure that if Ukraine does the step recognizing responsibility fully, Poland will also do it from their side. Well, this is actually inevitable because actually Ukraine and Poland has lots of the things in common. The language, Ukrainian language, is more similar to Polish one than to Russian one, as by the way the Belarus language too. So anyways, my Polish friends, people who watch me from Poland, thank you so much for your support. Don't look at politicians because people's opinion is usually very different from what you see on your TV channels. And I would say that our previous foreign minister was way more competent than the current one. Right, China intensified its provocation against the Philippine Navy. On the picture you may see lots of the Chinese ships and one military ship of Philippines. The thing that China built some of the islands artificially in the international waters, and now they claim that all of the surrounding area for 12 miles in radius of those islands is their national territory, which is actually fake. They try to escalate and to have more access to the open waters. Open waters, I mean those because basically China could be jammed by Taiwan or by Japan or South Korea over here, and from this side by Philippines and let's say Vietnam, because the relations between China and Vietnam are not so good either. So now they build some of the islands not far away from Philippines, claiming that it's their sovereign territory and territorial waters. And those are the methods they use. They basically hit the poor Filipinian ship with their vessels. Just look at it. Isn't that a provocation? Clearly it is. Here is the other spot. The Chinese Coast Guard. You can see that they hit the ship from many of the angles. Escalation again and again. That's what China tries to do. They feel that West is getting weak because it's unable to give Ukraine weaponry at some turned critical points, for example, or permission to use ATACMS. So why should the United States defend Philippines, their ally actually in the region? We live in a times when dictators are trying to crack the global stability, like Russia did in Ukraine, or like China does in their provocations against the Philippines and Taiwan. North Korea does it against the South Korea and Japan, or Iran the same. So it also should be the action time from the Western civilization, from democratic world, to show the real strengths. Otherwise those dictators will just escalate conflicts more and more until the full-scale war just arises. I mean, the Third World War definitely might happen because some of the Western countries, or Western politicians have no balls to act properly. I mean, we don't need to strike China with nukes or something. No, just apply very strong sanctions for China's economy to feel the pressure, and believe me, they will change their behavior at once. Some of the news from Switzerland. The experts in Swiss military, in the Swiss Defense Ministry, recommend a joint defense capability with the European Union and NATO due to the sharp deterioration of the situation in Europe. It is connected with Putin, money and weapons, as they say. Well guys, I know something about Switzerland and it will keep its neutrality after all. And for Swiss people and for Switzerland itself, it's actually good. Yeah, I'm telling kind of the unpopular opinion, but in a world where there are nukes, for Switzerland itself, based on its geographical position and based on the terrain in the country, well, it's better not to join any kind of the alliance. You see that in the case of the global war with Russia, for example, nukes will be used. It is almost 100% Russia has incapable army, especially after their special military operation in Ukraine. So for sure they'll fight the forces of alliances like NATO alliance with their tactical, at least tactical nukes. So by joining the NATO alliance, Switzerland will make itself a target for the Russian nukes. As simple as that. For Finland, it was very important to join the NATO alliance because it has a very long border with Russia, so it needs the protection. For Sweden, also because they're also not far away from Russia and they have the water access with the Russian ports. But for Switzerland, really it was neutral during the Second World War, and before it has its own military forces capable to defend the country only. And they don't need like the huge army on their territory to defend it because of the difficult terrain. It's really hard to invade Switzerland. By the way, there were the plans in the Nazi Germany to invade Switzerland, but they calculated their losses and decided not to do it. However, there were some of the air battles between German Luftwaffe and Switzerland Luftwaffe. Yeah, Messerschmitt against Messerschmitt, and this is the part of the history, kind of the interesting for my topic, the aviation one. Probably gonna tell about it on my other channel. Switzerland actually also had losses during the Second World War. Allies also bombed the country by mistake, mismatching the cities in Germany with the cities in Switzerland, and definitely the country was preparing to be attacked by the Nazi Germany. It didn't happen, it's good. For the Swiss people again. What's about the Swiss military? Could it be useful for NATO in general? As I told you, the Swiss military is enough to protect the country. But for the offensive operations to protect Lithuania, for example, or Poland, I don't think that they will play a great role. What could be good, for example, for Ukraine if Swiss allows to use their ammunition which they produce in their country, for example, for the air defense tanks Gepards. Germany now had to seek that ammunition for Ukrainian tanks because Swiss doesn't give its approval because it is a neutral country. But it might, for example, sell those shells to Germany or to any sort of the ally country, and by doing this trick, Ukraine might obtain those shells, but they don't want to agree on that either. So that's what I would like personally to see. That's my opinion. I also have lots of the opinions about the case. Some even accuse Switzerland for not helping Ukraine. Guys, Switzerland spends billions of francs to support Ukrainian budget. Also, it spends billions of francs to help Ukrainian refugees, so this country does what it can in its legislation. Some people call Switzerland to join NATO or EU. It's up to Swiss people to decide. They have a very interesting model. People decide on referendums, and I think they'll vote against joining NATO. Actually, many of the Swiss people would like to protect the other countries against aggression. Yes, it's the good thing to do, but now they have to put on the weight their own security. It isn't a second world war any longer. Potentially, it's a big nuclear war. So you may protect someone, right? But at the same time, you may lose a lot. So if, for example, Ukraine was in position of Switzerland, I mean geographical position, and if it was a neutral country, I would personally vote against joining NATO. It's my opinion, you may throw tomatoes at me, but I think that the government should protect, first of all, its own people. And I honestly do not see the pluses for the Swiss people protection if Switzerland joins NATO. If, for example, France or Germany had regimes like in Russia, yes, it's almost must-have. Like Ukraine absolutely should join NATO. Without it, there are no any security guarantees and Russia will strike again and again, escalating the war at the new level. But here, again, my friends, it's just my opinion. I hope you understand me why it is a bad idea for the Swiss people at first. By the way, there is one more country which is the European Union member but not in the NATO alliance. It's Austria. The neighbor of Switzerland, they also have the difficult terrain in some part of their country. I don't think they will join NATO in a close perspective at least, because there is no reason for it, again because of the nuclear weaponry. But for now, again, there are no talks about Switzerland to join NATO or something. They're speaking about cooperation. You know, guys, Switzerland is the country that shares the Western values. It's a democratic country, and I would say that it has the most democratic system. So I think that the Western civilization, democratic countries, might have some of the profit from the Switzerland neutrality. I think that it's better to have this neutral platform partially on your territory, like it happened, for example, with peace negotiations around Ukraine, than to have just one more small country with quite limited forces to protect alliance somewhere. And the Swiss military is focused not on offensive operation to protect someone, it is focused on its own defense only. It doesn't even have the long-range missiles like, for example, Germany has with Taurus, or like UK and France with their Storm Shadow/Scalp missiles. As I told you, the only thing which could be good for NATO from Switzerland is the production of some of the limited amount of the munition, but it doesn't worth to just cancel your neutral status that is there for hundreds of years. Come on, guys, Switzerland is a neutral country. I believe it should stay like that. And now let's go to the Ukrainian front lines, and again Russia moved today in Pakrovsk. Let's check out the timeline. So it was the day before yesterday. Actually, I missed one update, so it was yesterday, and it is today. Russia gains the ground, unfortunately, every day. It's a very tricky situation for Pokrovsk, and not only. Unfortunately, Russia still has enough resources to attack at many of the points. Now the distance is less than 7.5 kilometers. It's roughly 5 miles, and from Mirnograd it's even lower, 4 kilometers, 4.2. Russia already might cut this road using their mortars or artillery systems quite easily, because they use lots of the surveillance drones. They are able to operate in some of the areas if they are not jammed by Ukrainian jam units, you may call it. But more than here, Russia moves towards south somehow. It seems like they want to jam this entire area, and recently they moved from Krasnohorivka to Kurakhove. As our guys report on Telegram, I mean Ukrainian officers, Russia concentrated quite large number of the forces, lots of the armor vehicles, lots of the tanks, and numerous of the infantry forces, and they tried to break the Ukrainian defense in the second vector, but here it's more robust compared to Pokrovsk direction. So far, Russia is unable to penetrate it in this place. But there is the risk for Kurakhove from the north. Yes, there is the huge war obstacle, but Russia may attack also from Georgievka. From this area, they're more successful in this place. But still, they're very slow in this area, so the most effective part for them is still Pokrovsk. For the Vuhledar, well, I guess it's stable. Yeah, more or less it is stable for a couple of the days. A little bit movement here from the Russian side. Yes, indeed. They went here towards Antonovka settlement. Also, by the way, it could be one more vector towards Kurakhove. In towards direction, there is a new update, just the gray area expansion. There, for sure, Ukraine sent some of the reinforcements and quite capable brigades, plus the Western-made vehicles trying to repel the Russian army from this part of the city. The fighting is really heavy in Toretsk. And here we have the video from the drone. It shows the Ukrainian Bradley in Toretsk. It is fighting against the Russian forces, which went right into the building, so Ukraine from the very close distance fires against the Russian troops, which went to this multi-story building. There are no civilians any longer. It's basically the base for the Russian army, and with the help of the Bradley, Ukraine tries to repel the Russian forces from that building. The tactics for the Russian army is to move from one building to another, base by base, and taking more ground in the area. Here Ukraine goes all in to repel the strikes. Let's go for a while to Selidova. According to my information, which is shared by Ukrainian military officers, Ukraine was finally able to push the Russian forces out from the settlement. So Russians went into the place and they faced a tremendous fire from the Ukrainian side and they were forced to retreat. It's a good signal from the Pokrovsk direction. Yes, the situation is critical and almost catastrophic for the Ukrainian army in the place, but there are some of the good signs after all. Guys, I'm gonna keep you updated on the situation in Ukraine every day, and please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. As usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.